Hi, I'm Quentin Schultz, author of the book Communicate Like a True Leader and a professor of communication. I would like to talk with you a little bit, leader to leader here, about the importance of conversation. Don't tune out yet before I get into this, because it's something that we take for granted and we ought not to. Conversation is critical to our role as leaders and also to the health of every organization, whether it's a friendship or a family or a business or a nonprofit. What's the level of conversation? In fact, when I go out consulting with organizations and I pick up the fact that people don't like to converse with one another, to sit down, have coffee together, converse, whatever, I know there's trouble. And in fact, when some of the folks will not have a good conversation with me as the outsider coming in, they're reluctant to engage in just simple conversation with me about relatively unimportant things, I know there's a problem. You see, conversation sets the context for all of the other communication within an organization. It's not the official communication that comes down from on high, the memos and the vision statements and all of this stuff. That's important. But what really sets the scene, the context, what lays the groundwork for good or for bad, is what's happening in the everyday conversations among the people. And we forget this. In fact, we forget as leaders how to participate in such conversations. Let me read a little quote for you from Robert Greenleaf, who founded the field of servant leadership. And I learned more about leadership from Bob than anybody else. His writings on servant leadership are spectacular. So the title of my chapter, by the way, in the book on this is Conversing Well. Conversing, that is having a conversation well. And here's the quote from Bob. Approach the relationship with the attitude of acceptance that oneself, the persuader, may change. Approach our relationships, that is our communication, our communion with other people, with the possibility that we, as the persuader, the leader, might change. Now, what he's getting at there, very, very importantly, is that conversation is, among all forms of human communication, the one that is the easiest to engage in without fear, without hesitation. Now, I know in today's world with texting and all, we think about other things. It's so easy to fire off a text, this or that. But I'm talking about the kinds of communication where we reciprocate, where there's dialogue back and forth, not just firing off messages, okay? So when we look at this context of communication for relationships, setting the groundwork in our organizations, what we find is that the extent to which we can engage in conversation with our ears open, listening to others, and then offering from our heart whatever our thoughts or feelings are, and listening again, so it becomes dialogic back and forth, rather than a monologue. You sit down with someone and they just talk, and you've had that experience, right, with people when you're on an airplane or something and they just want to keep talking. They don't want to listen to you. There's no groundwork for relationship there, and you can't build an organization on that kind of miscommunication. So what is it about communication in the form of conversation that is so important then? It's this openness that we are willing to be influenced. Think of it this way. You get in a conversation with someone and it's about sports, and you have a strong opinion about a particular team. I grew up in Chicago, all right? I'm a Chicago Cub fan. I had to learn over the years growing up in Chicago how to have an open conversation with a White Sox fan without getting into trouble, right? I'm only half joking here, learning to be open so that you can have a conversation. Hey, what did you think about that game? How was Ernie Banks on this, or whatever? What did you think about that game? And now that the White Sox and the Cubs will actually play each other, that wasn't true when I was a kid growing up. It's even more fun to think about a conversation around sports where it's not just an opinion, but it's an openness to being influenced. That's what Greenleaf is getting at there. In conversation of all forms of human interaction, we are most likely to allow ourselves to be open to being influenced by others. And that's why it's so important. So in my life, I have found that when I want to start to understand what's going on in an organization, I need to begin with some conversations. I was recently on a campus, university campus, where I've been doing some consulting, and I went to the cafeteria and just sat down with some students and started some conversation. I said, by the way, I'm here working with the university. You don't need to know my name, and I don't want to know your name. Just tell me a few things. How do you feel about this place, about what's going on? What do you like or not like? And it was very interesting. One of the students said to me, well, I'm from Korea, and I don't feel comfortable here. I don't feel respected for the fact that I'm Korean. And I said, isn't that interesting? I wonder if others in the organization know that. Have leaders, quote unquote, in the organization, have they had that kind of conversation with students? I wonder about that. I was consulting with an organization one time on technology. I've done a lot of this because I love technology, and actually I started out in electrical engineering, not in the field of communication. And I was consulting with an organization about which technologies to employ to improve the communication among employees, okay? Among employees, not from top, the leadership down, the management down, but what's the best for communication? And I said, wait a minute, I'll give you my opinion on that. The best technology for promoting conversation among your employees is a water cooler. And of course they chuckled. And I said, where are the water coolers in this place? I haven't been able to find one. Where are the coffee machines? You see, what I was getting at was that often we think that the way to produce communication among people is through some elaborate technology, when in fact the incarnate, the in-person is so important. Do people eat together? Do they stand around that proverbial water cooler or the coffee counter? What's going on in an organization? Any organization where there are not those kinds of places for those kinds of conversations is an organization that's missing something fundamental, because those conversations help lay the groundwork where people appreciate each other, respect each other. They can talk about the differences between the Chicago Cubs and the White Sox and then get on with work. Conversation. I love Robert Greenleaf and that whole field of servant leadership. Approach the relationship with the attitude of acceptance that oneself, the persuader, may change. That's what conversation lays the groundwork for. So converse well and learn as a leader how to converse well. Just to sit down without trying to influence others, but as equals, mutual respect, to have a conversation. So important. Okay, if you're interested in this, please pick up a copy of my book, Communicate Like a True Leader. I'll put a link down below so you can pick one up from Amazon inexpensively if you'd like. And please post some notes. Tell me what you think about this video and about conversation in your life as a leader in any kind of organization. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much.